So there are many ways of looking at perfection, and this one of them, to lift everything to its absolute possible height. Possible height in the sense that as the consciousness grows, there is a next level at which perfection unfolds itself. So Mother has explained this beautifully, that perfection is not something like a fixed, it evolves. It's a equilibrium which keeps on improving and evolving. So Savitri, within her human limits, human beings are prone to joy and love and grief and sorrow and all these things. There is a perfection, a roundedness, a fullness which we see in the human persona of Savitri before it breaks through and discovers a new possibility. That will come later. But right now, Sri Aurobindo is taking us through a journey wherein he reveals to us the human perfection within human limits. And this also is not something small. It has its own charm and beauty. The Mother spoke about it, that among the many effects of the supramental consciousness, one of them will be that there is a layer of humanity which is not ready to sacrifice to that extent that not ready to go through whatever is necessary for transformation. There are some who are ready for that. They are ready to give everything and anything for the sake of transformation. But there is a layer of humanity which is not yet ready for that. But even that will be changed by the supramental influence into a beautiful humanity. It will still be human, but something very beautiful, something which is sublime. Even within humanity, there is a lot more possible, which is yet to manifest. And we see that expressed here, that Savitri is experiencing mortal love and grief, and still she doesn't betray it to others. If we experience a little pain, we are looking for another shoulder to cry. Somebody who can understand us. Somebody who can say a soothing word. But not Savitri. What does she do? She is in a house. Her quiet visage, still and sweet and calm. She maintained the same sweetness, calm, quiet visage. Inside she is going through a tumultuous phase. She only knows what's going to happen. But her visage, her countenance, nobody gets to know. They all feel, she is such a wonderful Bahu. She is really marvelous. She doesn't even breathe what she is experiencing inside. Her quiet visage. Her graceful daily acts were now a mask. In vain she looked upon her depths to find a ground of stillness and the spirit's peace. She has heard about this, that when there is a crisis, there is God within. She is the avatar. She has to go through all this process. So she is trying to look, but not yet. That process will come subsequently. It has begun. She is seeking it somewhere. Still veiled from her was the silent being within, who sees life's drama pass with unmoved eyes. Now look, Sri Aurobindo, this is the beauty of Sri Aurobindo. Suddenly he lifts up something from its abysm and takes it to the height. This whole passage reminds me of Shiva in Shamshan. What is Shamshan? It is the place where bodies are burnt. The dead bodies are kept or burnt. And what do you find in that place? It's a place full of sorrow, anguish, the sense of the utter vanity of life. And yet, at that point, you can discover the absolute Shiva. It's a very amazing. Now we see this here. Savitri is going through this inner tumult, this severe grief knocking at her door, this sorrow invading her from every side. And yet, with one line, Sri Aurobindo lifts us to another dimension. Still veiled from her was the silent being within. There is a being who watches this drama. But Savitri has not yet contacted that being. Who sees life's drama pass with unmoved eyes, supports the sorrow of the mind and heart, and bears in human breasts the world and fate. So though it appears so vain, futile, full of anguish, suffering, yet there is a being who watches and bears upon his breast the world and fate. But she is yet to contact that being. By putting this clause that she has not yet contacted, Sri Aurobindo brings us in contact with that being amidst this drama of fate which is unfolding. A glimpse or flashes came, the presence was hid. Only her violent heart and passionate will were pushed in front to meet the immutable doom. Defenseless, nude, bound to her human lot, they had no means to act, no way to save. So what she was doing, she had tremendous will. The part in us that is the strongest, that takes the frontal assault. So that indomitable will with which she is born, she pushes it to the front, keeps herself calm, doesn't allow anything to, even a whisper, nobody should know what she is going through. She does it because she has in her an indomitable will which will not bend, which will not break down under the compulsion of fate. But it cannot save either. It is yet not ready to save. These she controlled. Nothing was shown outside. Look at the divinity even of her human side. She was still to them the child they knew and loved. The sorrowing woman they saw not within. So the parents are very happy that what a wonderful girl has come to our household. Everything is changed. But they do not know the sorrow that is gnawing in her heart. If there is ever a description of what in Indian thought human love lifted to the heights of sati, we see it here. Even it goes right down to that description into the details. And when mother was shown this story in the playground of Anusuya, the sati who turned gods into babes. So mother was very amused. Then she said something very interesting. It's in written record now. She said, I was very happy to watch that film. Ah, what a scene! To see the gods become like babies. What height of human love. And then she said, only human beings can love like this, not even the gods. Then she gives the secret. Because human beings are endowed with a psychic being. That's why they can love like this. Even gods cannot love. This is a sign of the psychic presence. That one, even in grief, one holds it within and brings the best as gift to the world, not the worst. The world must get the best. Those whom we love, we must give them beautiful things and hold back the sorrow. That is how Shiva drinks the poison in his heart while giving the boon of immortality. He's a great god. And here is Savitri, like Shiva, drinking the poison and the sorrow, keeping it within. He kept it in his heart, in his throat, and she has brought it down to the heart, one step lower down. And to the world she gives only benevolence, joy, peace, love. This is Savitri. No change was in her beautiful motions seen. In fact, we can have a name, Neela Hirdaya. Neelkant we know. She is Neela Hirdaya. All the poisons she has taken in her heart. And to the world what she gives? Only joy and peace. A worshipped empress all once white to serve. She made herself the diligent serf of all. She is Raj Rajeshwari. And she is born also in a palace. But she has made herself easily a diligent serf. She qualifies it. There can be an unwilling serf. Somebody who is serving with a, what did I do to get married? Parents were right. Now I have to do all these things. Diligent, conscientious. She is doing it with a joy in it. She is doing it with beauty and love in it. So that's what she has become now. Nor spared the labor of broom and jar and well. In small passage, Sri Aurobindo brings a whole life of Savitri, her everyday life. What is the life? People often ask, what is the life of a sadhak? And they expect to be heard, well, I get up at 3 o'clock and meditate from 3:30 to 5:30. Here is the life of an ideal sadhak who is becoming ready for the next level. Even human life can become a training ground. This is how one trains oneself. This is the training ground. So what she is doing is, she is doing everything that is given to her. In fact, Mother has shown us the way. What did Mother do when she came? People didn't know how to even sit in front of Sri Aurobindo. They would put their feet and sit. He was to them their friend. Mother started sitting on the floor. Mother started putting patch on the saris and wearing it. Mother started cleaning the rooms with the broom. Literally, she has done it. Everything, cooking. And then later on, people would come and she would go on to other fields. She kept on working day and night. This is the path that they have shown. This can become a sadhana, everyday life event. When Krishna Prem, Ronald Nixon became Krishna Prem, when brilliant mathematician and linguist, so when his friends came from UK and they saw that he is cleaning the chulla. He's, in old time chulla, when there was no gas, you have to clean it and put cow dung and, all that, matti, all that. So he half scornfully, half amused, disdainfully says, "What? You are doing all this? You think you can find God this way? Is this the path to God?" And Krishna Prem looks up and says, "I do not know about that, but those who have walked ahead of me, they have gone this way. I know that they have gone this way. They have gone through the joy of service." And look here, we are fortunate to have an ashram where we can offer work. But Savitri has no ashram to offer work. But she turns that space into an ashram. So she is practicing this, doing this. Or close gentle tending, or to heap the fire of altar and kitchen, no slight task allowed to others that her woman's strength might do. Whatever she could do, she would not allow others. I will do it. This is the joy of service. This prepares us for, it's a training ground to make humanity fit for the divine embodiment. Divine embodiment is not like, okay, I'll sit, how many hours I can meditate. The dynamic parts of nature are never used. The mother says, without work, it is not possible to have transformation. Categorically, Sri Aurobindo and the mother have said. At another place, mother says, the more I grow, which is amazing for the mother to say, the more I grow, the more I discover that Sri Aurobindo's yoga is best done through works and service. Best done, because then the dynamic parts are engaged. Otherwise, these parts remain untransformed and we have nice inner experiences which bloats the ego. Sometimes the mind even fabricates experience, but that's another story. In all her acts, a strange divinity shown. What is she doing? Doing everyday commonplace things. But there is a divinity in it. Why? That we will see. Into a simplest movement she could bring a oneness with earth's glowing robe of light, a lifting up of common acts by love. So what is the sign that we are really offering the work to the divine? First, it's an act of love. Second, it brings joy. The divine's wages are instantaneous. There is nothing like after 1 month, come and collect your salary, DSOP fund cut, this fund cut, that insurance. All that is gratis, given anyways. But instantly he gives us the reward. People say, kya hua? Whole life I served the divine. What did I get? That means one never served the divine, but served the vanity of one's ego and spiritual ambition. That's all. If one serves the divine, the instant reward is joy, welling up of love for the divine, urge to progress, because it's instantly rewarded. One doesn't have to wait for afterlife or post-mortem. It's not a post-mortem check which is handed over to us right then and there, here and now. So all how divinity is seen in our acts, because they're lifted up by love. This is the key. Commonest acts. And it's so true. When we do the same thing with a grudge, it spoils everything. And when we do it as an act of love, that's why one should never ask anything from anyone. If you ask, there is a constraint. And when there is a joyous spontaneity, it's done with an act of love. There is in it a touch of the sublime, if not the divine, of course. So that is where Savitri is. And what a love she has brought with her. All love was hers, and its one heavenly cord bound all to her, all with her as golden tie. She has come to a new place. So people often speak about equipping, empowering. So nowadays people are empowered. You must know your rights or an account. Don't worry. If this fellow doesn't look after you, there is money in your account. This is not empowerment. This is another kind of dependency. Those who carry love in their heart are already empowered. She knows it. So when she goes there, what does she do? With that love, she holds all of them together. She becomes the golden tie to bring the parents of Satyavan and all others who are there. Everybody she adopts and makes them her own. How mother came here. And when she comes, before she comes, everybody, Amrita says, when I was told to stay out, some European couple are coming as guests. He was not happy. That, am I an outsider? I can't come today. So he was not happy. They were all, if she will come, people now, suddenly a lady is coming in their midst. So should we change our ways? Nalinda writes that we were debating, should we change our ways? They had a bohemian lifestyle. Means they would wear casually, put a towel around the waist and move around, throw things around. So he says we were having a very bohemian lifestyle and we were wondering what we should do when this great European yogi comes. Then they decided, no, why should we change our ways? Later on he says, this is how human arrogance works. It revolts against the light. This Nalita says that. So they said, no, we will not change our ways. But what did mother do? She didn't change them. She showed the way. When she came, they observed, they found, oh my God, who is she? Such sweetness, such care, such tenderness, such love. And they forget all things and they begin to just follow her like little babes. So this is the path that she has shown. She binds them all with her love. But then she is carrying the world's fate. But when her grief to the surface pressed too close, these things, once gracious adjuncts of her joy, seemed meaningless to her, a gleaming shell, or whereas round, mechanical and void, her body's actions shared not by her will. But time to time that grief will come when she is alone. And that time she would wonder, all this, bringing them close together, binding them with love, what is the ultimate thing? They are going to lose this boy. I am going to lose, but look at their misery. She is thinking of all this. It's meaningless. Why am I? Because she has come with a foreknowledge. Why am I doing all this? Always behind this strange divided life, her spirit, like a sea of living fire, possessed her lover and to his body clung, one locked embrace to guard its threatened mate. She doesn't know what to do. All that she has is an indomitable will and a tremendous power of love. So she says, I will guard him with that love. Death will not come close. Every moment that she could find, she took him into her own, and as if she would guard him against everything else. Threatened mate. Now look at these lines. At night she woke through the slow, silent hours, brooding on the treasure of his bosom and face. She looking at Satyavan sleeping like a baby. He doesn't know. She looks at his face. What marvelous face. What a joy. What a jewel upon earth. Hung over the sleep-bound beauty of his brow, or laid the burning cheek upon his feet. So he is sleeping peacefully, and she's just looking at his brow on his face. Marvelous face. She doesn't want to lose even a moment of that delight of love. Or she's putting her cheek against his feet, just feeling them. Because otherwise he will wake up. So see perfection. What a perfection Sri Aurobindo is taking us to. Waking at morn, her lips endlessly clung to his. Sri Aurobindo is not a Puritan. He knows entire human life in its entirety, but he also knows its limitation. He also knows the beauty of the future. So look at it, how he's describing human love. So very often people, Savitri, what is yoga in Savitri? Everything is yoga in Savitri, even the most human love, because it comes from a deep source of love and self-giving. That is the beauty of this act. It's not the act in itself. It's an act of kiss on his lips, but it's not for her own sake. She wants to make sure, oh, time should not take him away. He's such a bright jewel upon earth. Unwilling ever to separate again or lose that honeyed drain of lingering joy, unwilling to lose his body from her breast, the warm, inadequate signs that love must use, lifts it. What is in synthesis, Sri Aurobindo speaks about it. Love seeks two things in its joy of union: intensity and eternity. If there is intensity, in that one moment there is a completeness, but it doesn't last. After a while that intensity fades. It's the same boring old life. So intensity doesn't last. Or sometimes it can last like an eternity, like two people just hold hands and walk together mechanically. That's eternity, but the intensity has gone away. So, but these two things, and he says these two cannot come unless there is a basis of the divine. And that is why love for the divine carries the greatest fulfillment. Because in human love, you have one, you lose the other. Of course, there is another aspect which later on he says. In divine love, usually the vital physical parts are not engaged except through a process of transformation, but that's going into another dimension. So these are warm, inadequate signs. What is the sign? Of losing oneself into another, of giving oneself completely, of possessing. This too is an act of love. Love seeks to give and to possess completely. It is not satisfied with half things. It wants to give completely and it wants to possess completely. That's how there is a perfection of love. So these are the inadequate signs. And then look at this fieriness, intolerant of the poverty of time. Her passion catching at the fugitive hours, willed the expense of centuries in one day. What I am destined to experience the joy through a whole life, can I have in this moment? Because it's just a short time. Of prodigal love and the surf of ecstasy. What is prodigal love? Where one spends lavishly. So she wants to do everything for Satyavan. Probably from morning she starts thinking, what do you love to eat? What colors do you like? Let me do everything which will make you happy. Prodigal love, which is just lavishing everything. And surf of ecstasy. She is riding over waves of ecstasy, refusing to drown into that ocean which is gaping below her feet. So she doesn't want every moment. I mean, there are so many descriptions of human love lifted through sublime spiritual poetry. For instance, we have, of course, that famous about Krishna and Radha, Jayadev. It's human love. Divine love and human love fused together into something very sublime. Or in Ramayana, we have description of the love of Rama and Sita. Or in Bhagavad. But this is something going beyond everything that we can even imagine. Even the most physical aspects of love, Sri Aurobindo includes. Or else, she strove even in mortal time to build a little room for timelessness. By the deep union of two human lives, her soul secluded, shut into his soul. Timelessness. She is experiencing for a while. And look, these lines, after all was given, she demanded still, even by his strong embrace unsatisfied. Still the perfection has not come. Sri Aurobindo must take that experience to its zenith. So even after everything she has received and she has given, she still wants more, because that is the intensity and the power of love that she is carrying within herself. Even by his strong embrace unsatisfied, she longed to cry. She doesn't cry. Look at the perfection. She longed to cry. Savitri will never speak about what she wants. But she wishes she could tell him. If her heart could have words, it would speak like this. She longed to cry, "Oh, tender Satyavan, oh lover of my soul, give more of love while yet thou canst to her thou lovest." This is the intensity of love. It grows, it's a fire that grows and grows till it consumes everything. So long as there is even the slightest sense of a separate self, love remains unsatisfied. So it must ask for more and more. Imprint thyself for every nerve to keep that thrills to thee the message of my heart. So what is that state of love to which she has arisen? She wants every pore of her being to feel his love. Imprinted, because tomorrow he won't be there. But she will remember this imprint. It's very interesting. Of course, this same thing we can lift it to divine heights. When we love the divine, everything, everywhere, where the divine has touched, one wishes that whole thing could be imprinted in every part. This is where there is one difference between human love and divine love. Or love turned towards human and love turns toward divine. There are places where, in some of the bhajans of Meera, Sri Aurobindo experiences this in what he terms as Kamananda and Maithunananda, where in every cell he experiences that highest ecstasy. But at a human level, we seek it, and very inadequately, imperfectly, within the limits of the human, of course, perfectly, try to create it. So every nerve, she wants imprint of Satyavan to last forever. Imprint thyself for every nerve to keep that thrills to thee the message of my heart. I cannot tell you, but my nerves must be telling you. Listen to my nerves, imprint upon every nerve. Look at the perfection. Without saying everything, she is saying everything. There is a line, there is a passage in Ramayana where Sita wants to see Rama, longs to see him. After all, she loves him, given everything. But how to see? It is not done. It's in Ramcharitmanas. She can't okay, hi, how are you looking? Let's have a selfie. No. So what does she do? She wants to look at Rama. How does he look in this dress? He has come to marry her. They are sitting on the mandap. So Ramcharitmanas lifts it to sublime heights. She is wearing a ring which reflects the image. So she looks at her ring, gently turning it towards Rama, and looks at Rama's reflection in the ring, and her heart is thrilled. Look at the sublimity of the emotion and the image. So it's anything, if it is refined and purified, it can come close to divinity. We should not mistake it to think that this is the ultimate. It's not yet transformed. But it becomes a very fit material for the next stage. This too is part of the book of yoga. Who is Savitri? How she has lived a human life. She has not walked away like, ascetics saying, oh, all this is nonsense, wasteful, and I am walking away into the forest. That is not a fit material for transformation. It's very crude. Many ascetics have very great experiences inside, but they are very, very crude on the outside. That material cannot be transformed. They can have nice inner experiences, gloat over it, and shut themselves. But even her human life is so sublime. For soon we part, and who shall know how long? She is not yet given up. How long? Before the great wheel in its monstrous round restore us to each other and our love. She knows that, this love will come back. But when? Who knows which life? So she wants every moment of that. Too well she loved to speak a fateful word. But she loves him. She cannot tell him, share this need. She cannot tell him the anguish of her heart. Because too well she loved. Why she is not saying? Because love. Love is being taken to what heights? Too well she loved to speak a fateful word and lay her burden on his happy head. She pressed the outsurging grief back into her breast to dwell within silent, unhelped, alone. So she never gave any indication of what she is experiencing, the agony inside. This is Savitri. How mother would have felt with all these children. At one place Sri Aurobindo says, as if someone lifts up the burden of a blind race to show the path. So, someone has to show the path to whom? To men who are blind, which is very difficult. So, every time Sri Aurobindo, the mother said something, there was a counter question, then another counter question. Half the time they are explaining because we are blind. So, this is how they had to do their work, what they would have felt. But she gave only joy. She would not, sometimes it would slip once in a while. They knew humanity is not ready. That's why the mother describes when she came in 1920 to Sri Aurobindo, one of the questions that she had was, is humanity ready? Will it be this time? So she didn't speak to Sri Aurobindo about it. They were standing together and she describes that scene. We were very close. My head was very near his shoulder. And this question came into my heart. Will it be this time? Because so many times they have tried. They have tried it as Rama and Sita to establish an ideal divine family. But man's stupid mind, the doubt in the head of the dhobi, comes in the way. So Sita has to go back to earth. They came as Radha and Krishna, but the world cannot accept this love. Radha is older, Radha is married. There are social norms and taboos. Krishna breaks all of them. But world is not ready. Again they have to live separate. But now they have come as Mother and Sri Aurobindo. They have overpassed all the social norms and niceties. But is mankind ready? This is the big question. And the mother says, as soon as I thought that, there was within him a yes, and I saw the supermind descend down and touch the earth. Sri Aurobindo sanctioned it. Yes, it will be this time. Man cannot be ready by himself. You have to make him ready. And the mother takes up this task, doesn't let how during the time when Sri Aurobindo was going through near 5th December 1950, Nirodha describes that mother went, attended all the activities, even the 2nd December program, and nobody could feel what is coming in the way. She knew it. And Sri Aurobindo would also not tell what is happening. He had decided to do something. And in fact he says that on 4th December, suddenly he looked very nice, as if the whole illness is gone, and he was chatting with us very nicely. He was speaking to us and we thought, at last it's over. So Nirodha asked him that, so you must be using your force to cure the illness. And Nirodha writes, his reply shocked us. He said, no. So he asked, why not? Can't tell you. You won't understand. Then they didn't know. What is this? Everything has disappeared. But he's not using his force. So what's happening? What's going on? And then it was, of course, his gift to all those who had served and loved him. And then half an hour later, everything changes, the whole scene. Till the last day, they did not betray. There were hints sometimes dropped, like once Sri Aurobindo says, let us finish Savitri soon. Then Nirodha says, but there is one more book left for revision, the book of death. He says, oh, that we shall see later. He was very happy that Savitri is finished. This was a hint. But Nirodha says it's later on that we saw the hint. He had dropped the hint. He was happy that the most important work is over. The book of death, oh, that we will see later. They knew it, but they would not drop the hint. So this is how Savitri is. She is keeping that inside. But Satyavan sometimes half understood. Something is there. Or felt at least with the uncertain answer of our thought-blinded hearts the unuttered need. Thought-blinded, what a line this is. Thought-blinded heart. Heart can know things. But by thinking, analyzing, we blind it. So that's why when we ask too many questions to people whom we love, they get very irritated. Don't you know? At least you must know by now. That's true. If the heart is there, it will know. but the mind is active. It's one of the games, no, in marriages, that you must know. How you should know? By your heart. Women do this because they are heart-centered. So they expect the husband to know everything from the heart. And the poor man is asking, what do you need? Why are you angry? What is the problem? No, I'll not tell you. Nothing. But that nothing says everything. That nothing is an ominous nothing, like a sentence that you are good for nothing. That nothing is a whole world. And you have to wonder, what is the problem? Problem is, feel with the heart. Don't ask, don't use this mind. Thought blinded heart. Too much thoughts blind the heart. So many masterpieces like jewels we discover in Savitri. So little bit he could feel the unuttered need. By the heart he could feel somewhat the unuttered need. The heart which was blinded by thoughts. The unplumbed abyss of her deep passionate want. All of his speeding. So he felt that no, she wants, she's not satisfied and happy. Somewhere he felt by the heart this need. So what does he do? He is a very good man. He is not complaining. He doesn't say, what more do you want me to do? I am doing everything for you. You mean I should leave the job and sit at home? He doesn't do that. He understands the need. Look at the ideal relationship. So what does he do? All of his speeding days that he could spare from labor in the forest hewing wood and hunting food in the wild sylvan glades and service to his father's sightless life, he gave to her and helped to increase the hours. So the Satyavan is also not an ordinary being. So he is doing all the things after he has taken care of the needs of the home, after he has tended to the father, sat by the side of his mother. Now he doesn't say, I have done my bit, you please serve me with a nice cup of tea. I'll sit before the TV with my newspaper. No, he doesn't do that. He says, now I must give her this time. This is her time. And therefore he is increasing the hours. Look how the increase can take place. Because now it's a two-sided love. It's a response from both sides. He feels from his heart the unuttered need and increases her hours from his side also. He gave to her and helped to increase the hours by the nearness of his presence and his clasp. And lavish softness of heart-seeking words. So what does he do when he is with her? Not saying, oh, I had a bad day. Oh, you know how sunny it was in the forest? Oh, my hands are tired. Can you please do something about it? There is an Amritanjan balm. Nothing. He is speaking soft words. You know, you are so kind. I am so fortunate to have you by my side. He is not coming and rudely chastising her, complaining, you know, my mother is not happy. Nothing. He is now, it's his time with her and he must give. He gave to her and helped to increase the hours. And lavish softness of heart-seeking words and the close beating felt of heart on heart. All was too little for her bottomless need. But Savitri is carrying the sorrow of the earth in her heart. How much ever he could give, how could he tell him that, look, I know this is not going to last. So it's a bottomless need, and yet, even if human beings could touch 10% even of this life would be beautiful. Divinization is, of course, another step. But even 10% of this, selfless love, unselfish love, love which knows only giving and sacrifice, love which is full of mutual affection and joy, a deep understanding of heart to heart. That's why Mother has created this new thing in the earth. So when she was asked about marriages, she said it's an institution which has outlived its purposes. In Auroville, there will be no more marriages. So, what does it mean? So, if people love each other, they can stay together as long as they love each other. So, people were shocked. What is she saying? As long as they love each other, they can live and then they can move away. It can be very confusing and disorienting because it can almost mean what kind of life? Then Mother must have read the heart of humanity. She says, wait, wait, wait. You also must read this message which I must give along with what I have said. So that's the birth of that famous message, to unite your lives, which is the message we get when people get married from the ashram. To unite your lives, to have the same physical taste, to have the same thoughts, same feelings, same hopes, all same interests, to be moved by the same joy. All this is good, very good, but it is not enough. In the depths of the heart, at the apex, there shines a fire. In that aspiration, we must unite. To be moved to the same goal, hand in hand, at the same pace, to the same goal, through the same path. This is the secret of a lasting union. So she qualified it. She said, okay, people will think, okay, no marriage means, okay, few days I am happy, gone. No, she was not saying that. It's a very serious inner commitment. Satyavan and Savitri, what was their marriage? Nowhere it is described. Their marriage is described in the forest. Gandharva Vivah. Nobody was a witness, no priest. And look at what that marriage turns out to be. It's not solemnized by priest or mantras. The winds are the chant of the mantras, the sun is the priest and the fire, and they get married. And they remember forever. This is the beauty of this love. If in his presence she forgot a while, grief filled his absence with its aching touch. She saw the desert of her coming days, imaged in every solitary hour. Last few lines. Although with a vain imaginary bliss of fiery union through death's door of escape. Now she is lifting Sati to the utmost. This was the origin, not what we debate on the television. The intensity of love burning to the depths, the very body that a woman, rare woman, desired. If I could walk in the footsteps of my husband through the wall of fire into the realm of death. Sri Aurobindo is speaking of that. That is the inner fire. So he is even bringing that although with a vain imaginary bliss, this was her thought, of fiery union through death's door of escape, she dreamed of her body robed in funeral flame. Imagine, her body is wearing the flame of the funeral. That also becomes her investiture. She wears that robe. There is a robe she must have worn during wedding, when she started a new life. Now she is preparing to wear a robe of flame, to be wedded to him eternally. So she dreams of that. To die with him, funeral flame. She knew she must not clutch that happiness. This is a joy for her to walk with him through the gates of death. It's not something which society is forcing on her. No. She loves him so much that life without him is meaningless. She is her God. And so she imagines, maybe I could die with him, on the pyre go with him. But she is refusing that happiness. Why? This is called sublime perfection of love. She knew she must not clutch that happiness, to die with him and follow, seizing his robe, across our other countries, travelers glad, into the sweet or terrible beyond. Like Sita traveling with Rama into the forest. She knows I can travel into the beyond possibly, but she doesn't want that happiness. She's not saying that sorrow. Why? Because it's so touching. For those sad parents still would need her here to help the empty remnant of their day. It really gives goosebumps. Goosebumps don't come only when we talk about God, but manifesting divinity in earthly life. She is willing to walk with him beyond the pyre and the grave to the realm of the beyond, and that is joy for her. She doesn't do it. Why? Because of the parents who will suffer. They are Satyavan's parents. He loves them. They love him. So you see, the same things, when they are done as an act of love, they become joy and a sacrament. When they are done as a duty or mechanical or an enforced code, they become something dark and cruel. The difference between these two is an act of faith. So whatever is the faith that we put into an act, that quality it assumes. And so we stop here with these marvelous lines. We'll continue tomorrow.